All right, good afternoon. So thank you for joining us today for the E-Rate Form 471 Category 2 training. I am Lori Gurman, the State E-Rate Coordinator, and looking through, I'm sorry, I now have 3 monitors on my desk, and I'm still adjusting to where do I look. So looking at the list of participants here, a lot of familiar names, but I think we have a few new folks. So as we go through this, please don't hesitate to ask questions. I don't want to feel like a talking head. But I am Lori Gurman, as I said, the State E-Rate Coordinator, and so my job is to help you get through this process. All right, so you should be seeing a slide with today's agenda. Christine, can you confirm that?
Everything looks good, Lori. Your slides are moving just fine.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so here's a quick agenda of what we'll be talking about today. Now, if you did attend the 471 Category 1 training, some of this you've heard already. All right, but we're going to be talking about it as how this applies to Category 2. It's especially around internal connections. That's when you're purchasing the equipment outright. All right, so again, some of this you've heard already. All right, but a little different slant. So we will talk about the filing basics. We'll talk about, accessing the portal, entering contracts, all right, and then actually filing that 471. So under the Category 2, there are 3 different service types: the internal connections, MIBS, the managed internal broadband service, and then basic maintenance of internal connections. So I'll show you what it looks like to file a funding request for each of those. We're going to be spending more time, though, on internal connections, because that's where we see, most library applicants, applying for that. All right, and then we'll finish with completing the 471, getting it submitted, and then talking about next steps. All right, so filing basics. All right, and like I said, if you attended the Category 1, you've heard this, heard this just a couple of days ago. All right, but 471, this is where we're stating, specifically what it is that we're buying, who we're buying from, the cost. All right, the type of equipment, the quantity, that kind of detail. All right, and this does have to be filed every single year. All right. Now, if you're filing a Form 470, remember you have to wait the 28, the minimum 28-day waiting period. That's calendar days before you can choose a vendor, sign up on a contract, and then submit the 471. And when we talk about, waiting that 28 days, signing a contract, that contract could just simply be a hardware quote. All right, because anything that, we go to purchase, that's not a month-to-month service, basically the portal calls it a contract. All right, but again, it could just be that simple hardware quote that you've signed and dated. All right, so again, make sure that you follow those steps. Now, the all-important filing dates, the window opened on January 15th. It does close on March 26th at 11:59 p.m. All right, so, mark that on your calendar. Because we have, if you're filing that Form 470 and we have to wait that 28-day waiting period, all right, then that makes the deadline to file the 470 February 26th. All right, so that would allow you, if you file the 470 on the February 26th date, on that deadline, then the 29th day, that's the earliest that you could start evaluating the bids received, would be March 26th. All right, but that would allow you, though, to basically get the bids in, do the evaluation, file the Form 471. All right, but that would have to be done by that 11:59 p.m. on that March 26th date. Now, because we are talking, specifically about Category 2 today, you can have more than one Form 471 if you are filing, let's say, for internal connections. Internal connections is when you're purchasing the equipment outright, router, switches, access points, and so on. All right, managed internal broadband service, you may have a multi-year contract. If you're contracting with a service provider to do that monitoring management of your network, right? You could put both funding requests on the same 471 application, or you could split it and file 2 different applications. That's entirely up to you. All right. And then the third service type, basic maintenance of the internal connections. Again, that can be on a separate 471. It would just make sense, though. It would just be easier just to put it on the same 471 with the other request. Again, it's entirely up to you. Now, entity profiles, the portal did basically USAC locked it down on the evening of January 9th. All right. So, adding, information if you need to update your square footage. Remember, with category 2, this is based on a fixed budget, and it's based on the square footage. So we have to report square footage for each of our library sites. All right. And then that square footage is just added up and then multiplied by $4.50. That's how your Cat 2 budget is calculated. So if you go in and you see that, maybe some of your sites, some of your branches, maybe the square footage is still sitting at 0. All right. That's never been updated. That's okay. That won't prevent you from filing the 471. All right, but I will show you where, when we file the 471 application, in the narrative box, that you'll want to detail that correct those correct counts. All right, so we want to do that, like I said, to make sure you're getting the full benefit of your the budget. Sorry, can't say that. All right, so contracts, I mentioned that this has to be uploaded beforehand. It really does save you time. Get this done before you start the 471, because once you get into the application, it's going to ask, how are you purchasing? And pretty much everything under category 2 would require a contract. All right. So you want to make sure, go through those steps. So once you're in the 471, you can point to that contract. All right. So accessing the portal. Now I'm kind of zipping through this. Please let me know if I need to slow down. All right, so we file everything within EPC, EPIC, the E-Rate Productivity Center. So to access that, we go to usac.org/e-rate, right? So portal for all of our E-Rate work. So when we click on sign in, all right, username is your username is your email address. All right, enter the password. If you did not attend the Cat 1 training, all right, I mentioned that the passwords typically expire after about 45 days. All right, so don't be surprised if you go to log in and it's prompting, for a new password. All right, so once you do, it'll, send you a MFA code. All right. So I do want to point out, we've had some technical glitches. I've heard this from a number of folks, that at the point that they're putting in the code, they enter that MFA code and then it goes to a blank screen. We have reported this to USAC, so it's a known issue. All right. We've had issues for a little while where it'll give an error message talking about an issue with tokens. All right. If you get that, if you go up and highlight the URL there on the address bar and press F5, that's been a workaround. All right. So just a heads up, sometimes it can be a little glitchy. All right. So once we get logged in, that'll initially take us to the dashboard. And you'll click on that first, what looks like a paragraph. It's really a menu option, right? Click where it says E-Rate Productivity Center. All right, so when we log in, it does take us initially to what we call the landing page. It's basically your home page. All right, if you go down to the section called My Entities, it's going to show you, right, all of the entities that are currently within EPIC, all right, for your organization. So if you're a library system, the very first item listed will be what we call the billed entity. All right, so that's denoting, the library system who's paying the bills, and then each of the branches would be listed below that. Now, up in the upper left-hand corner here, where you see the USAC logo, as you click on different things throughout the portal, you may go several, layers deep. In order to get back to the landing page, anytime you see a USAC logo, that's the shortcut to bring you back to the landing page. All right, so, if you're at the blue menu bar, you can click where it says News. That will show you the logo. Again, it's just a shortcut to get back to the landing page. All right, so let's start first with looking at my entities. I'll click on the build entity. All right. And, I stress this again, if you attended the category one training, going in and verifying your discount rate. All right. Because if the school district went in and updated the enrollment and the lunch counts by that January 9th date, you want to make sure, did that impact your discount rate? All right. So when you click on discount rate, it's going to show you, here's the combined, student enrollment district wide. All right, for whichever district is associated with the main library, how many students qualify for the lunch program. All right, but then as we read across, it's going to say, for this library system, are you in a rural or urban location? That's based on your zip code. All right, and and it's reported through basically the census. All right, so again, are you urban or rural? But then it's going to show your discount rate for category one versus category two. Just remember that if you're at the highest discount rate for the category one, all right, 90%, you'll be at an 85% for category two. Anything below that, then cat one and cat two is the same. All right. One other thing that you want to look at while you're here at this, on the summary page. All right, immediately to the right of the discount rate, you're going to see where it says category two budget. All right, now also on that summary page, if you go all the way down, scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's going to be a box here that says category two budget information, and it's going to show you, here's the sum total, all right, of all the square footage for all of the libraries within the library system. All right, so again, look at that number, determine, is that correct? All right, because again, if there's some of your sites that do not have the correct square footage, you want to make sure and update that in the portal. All right, so again, that is how your cat 2 budget is calculated, that number times $4.50. All right, but if we click where it says category 2 budget, it's going to show us, based on the square footage, what is the budget. So you can see this budget's fairly large, a little over $2 million. All right, but then as we read across, it'll say, here's the amount that's currently in review. So, when you file a Cat 2 471 for this upcoming funding year, it's going to automatically say, okay, here's the amount of funding, that you're asking for. All right, now it will also show you if there's been any previous commitments starting back with the 2021 funding year, because that was the first year of this current 5-year cycle. All right, so again, it's going to show you any amount that's been previously funded, all right, back to 2021, as I said, anything that, if once you file the 471, it's in review, not funded, and then what's the remaining budget. All right, but again, you want to look at this information, do you have adequate budget, all right, to request all the equipment that you need. Keep in mind, let's say you only have, let's say $30,000 left in your budget, but you need to purchase, approximately $50,000, dollars worth. Well, that's fine. You can go ahead and ask E-Rate to cover that $30,000. All right, just know that anything over that will be out of pocket. Now, the other thing to remember when we look at the budget amount, all right, this is what we call a pre-discount amount. So what that means is if you went out and you spent up to whatever that remaining budget, that dollar amount, E-Rate's going to reimburse you whatever your discount rate is. All right. So if you're at, let's say, an 80% discount rate, you would get back 80% of that remaining budget. Bottom line, you're never going to receive 100% of the dollar amount listed there. All right. This is, as I said, it's pre-discount. Now, this does get a little confusing for folks, so let me know if you have questions there. All right, so let's talk about entering contracts. All right, so from the landing page, all right, again, when you click on that build entity, okay, yeah, let me back up just a second, okay? It's very important, and again, I covered this with the Cat 1 training, very important that, before you actually sign and upload a contract, very important that you do the bid evaluation, all right? This is something that, you evaluate and you put this in your files, should USAC request it. All right. And then if you go out to my resource page, my resource library, there's a Word document out there. It's a 2-page document. So there's a bid matrix there for Cat 1. All right. The second page is for Cat 2. But you can go in, you can update the factors. Just make sure that price has to have the highest number of points, right? It has to be the most, heavily weighted. All right. But again, you can come in and you can change some of these factors. If you don't need the cabling factor there, just completely remove it and then adjust the points. All right. But again, very important that you set this up, sign and date it, and then put it in your files, because during, certain types of reviews or audits, USAC will ask for this. All right. So again, do yourself a favor, get that done. Okay. So managing our contracts, uploading contracts. So from the landing page, once we click on the build entity, you'll see that menu option where it says contracts. When you click there, it's going to show you, any contract that's currently in the system. We started using this in 2016, right? So once you create a contract record in here, it is in there for good, right? You cannot go back and delete or edit anything. All right. So when you look at that list, it might be a little lengthy. All right, just depending on how many, funding requests, contracts that you have in place. All right, so we'll start with clicking here in the upper right where it says Manage Contract. I'll click there. All right, when I click on Manage Contract, then it's going to allow us to see, kind of split this out based on submitted contracts versus draft versions. All right, so as we go through this, there's a number of steps. So if you have to stop in the middle of this, you can click on Save and Close. Once you click on Manage Contract, you can come here, right, click on the pull down and choose My Contract Drafts, and you're going to see any of those draft versions. We'll just come down here, click the box to the left, and then click on Edit. All right, and it will allow you to pick up where you left off. All right, so just, don't panic if you have to stop in the middle. You can always come back into the document. All right, but we're going to be adding a brand new contract, so I'll click on Add a New Contract. All right, and then everything in this portal, it asks for a nickname, so you want to make this something descriptive, so that if you come back later or someone comes in behind you, right, they can kind of pick this out. All right, understand exactly what's in this record. So here I said, APC hardware. I typically put like the vendor name, the service provider name, and then the funding year. All right, but again, however you want to name that. Now, contract number, if you have a contract number, you can put it in there, but that is not required. I don't waste the time basically going out and looking for that. All right, because it's not required. Okay, but I'll click on Save and Continue. Now, you'll see here at the top, all right, the breadcrumbs, the various steps that we'll have to go through, all right, the contact information, establishing the 470, choosing the service provider, and so on. Now, it does ask, would you like to upload a copy of your contract, yes or no? If you're doing this, you should have that contract signed and dated by this point, right? So I would, do yourself a favor, go ahead and upload it, all right? Because when you do that, then the application, the reviewer, right, for your application, they already have that documentation on hand. So it does eliminate, some of the review questions. So if you would indicate no, it'll let you go on, without uploading, but then you're going to get lots of review questions. All right, so here I selected the option, yes, I want to upload it, clicked on the upload button. All right, uploaded that. In this case, it was just a hardware quote that was signed and dated. Now, to the right, we have that additional text box if we want to give a little more detail. It's not required, all right? It's up to you, all right, if you want to provide that detail. And then we click on Save and Continue. All right, so now it's asking, is this based on a state master contract or multiple award schedule? Typically with anything under Category 2, that answer is no. There are no state master contracts for equipment, all right? So again, typically that would be no. Now, if you're not sure what they're asking here, if you come up to the little blue circle with a question mark. You can click there. It'll explain, specifically what it's looking for. All right, but like I said, typically the answer is no there. All right, and then we click on save and continue. Yeah, this part's fairly easy. Now it does ask when we get to the screen, initially you're just going to see that first question. Can other applicants piggyback off this contract? All right, and again, typically that is no. All right, then it's asking, was this contract, once you answer that first question, the second question pops up. It's, was this contract originally created by another applicant? And then you're piggybacking off of that contract. Again, the answer is no. I don't know of any state, state contracts, shared contracts out there, especially for category 2. All right, so we'll click on save and continue. Now, this is where it's asking about the 470. Now, anything under category 2, so internal connections, basic maintenance, or MIBS, all 3 of those service types require you to file a 470. All right, the only time we don't have to file a 470, that only applies to that commercially available internet access under category 1. All right, anything under cat 2, all right, you need to make sure that you file that 470. So here I'll indicate yes, I filed the 470. To the right of that, it's how many bids were received. This is how many, actual bids for the services that you requested. All right, so if you were asking for equipment, there's some vendors out there, some service providers, that will automatically send out a quote that has nothing whatsoever to do with what you put on that 470. All right, so if it's not a legitimate bid, you don't have to count it. All right, those I typically keep in my file, so I've got a record of it. All right, but you would not include those type bids in this bid count. All right, so these are just, 3 actual bids for what I was requesting. So in this case, I said there were 3 of them. Now it does ask, was a 470 posted prior to 2016? That answer would be no. All right, especially anything under category 2. All right, so now we need to go out and we need to search for the 470 that we filed. The default is it searches by your billed entity number. All right, that's automatically populated there. You don't have to key that in. And then you come over and you can click on search. You can also, if you want to type in the 470 number, you can do that. Or if you remember the nickname that you assigned that 470, you can search that way as well. All right, again, probably the easiest is searching by bin. So I'll come over and I'll click on search. The only thing to be, careful of when you do search for a 470 by the billed entity number, it's going to show you every 470 that's been filed since 2016, right? Since the start of using Epic. So again, you want to be very careful to make sure you select the correct 470. Well, first off, any 470 for this upcoming 2025 funding year will start with 250. The first 2 digits denote the funding year. The third digit is the form type. All right, so 0 for the form 470. It'll show us the nickname that we gave that 470. Now, what you can do, each of these column headers, you can click, all right, to sort. So what I do is I click on the funding year twice. The first time you click it, it'll show the oldest first. Click the second time, it'll bring the most current to the top. All right. Now, again, as we read across, it's going to say, here's the allowable contract date for that 470. That means the 29th day from when that calendar day from when that 470 was submitted. All right, because remember, this is that allowable contract date. That's the earliest that you can start evaluating bids and choosing a vendor. So if you're in here doing this, prior to your allowable contract date, all right, you can do a save and close. All right, go back, wait that time, right, and then do the bid evaluation again. You want to make sure that it's dated on or after that allowable contract date. Okay, the last piece of information here, it just helps you make sure, are you, grabbing the right 470. It's going to show you the service types that were listed on that form. All right, so this is showing that on this 471, or excuse me, form 470, pardon me, I asked for basic maintenance, data transmission, internet access, internal connections, and MIBS. I just put everything on the same 470. All right. But again, just to make sure that you're, that you're grabbing the right application. So I'll come over here and I'll click the box to the left, and then I click on Save and Continue. Okay, so now when we look at the breadcrumbs, we're at the step where we identify the service provider. All right, now it does ask, do you have an account number, like a, bill telephone number, whatever. If you have an account number, you can list it there, but again, it's not required. All right, so it's really not worth, taking the time to go look that up. It is not required. Okay, but then we search for the service provider. You can search by your SPIN, the service provider identification number, or by the company name. All right, but it is safest to key in the SPIN. Some service providers, depending on the company, may have multiple SPINs. You want to make sure that you're grabbing the right one. All right, and typically service providers will put their SPIN on their quote. If not, I would shoot them an email and ask them, verify what SPIN you should be using. All right, but here I've keyed in the identification number, and then I come over here and I click on search. It comes back with the search results. All right, just verify, make sure you didn't transpose numbers, right? Just verify that number, but then also check the company name. All right, again, just make sure that you are selecting the correct company. All right, we say, yep, that's correct. So I'll check the box to the left, and then I'll click on Save and Continue again. Now, it is asking, is this a multi-year contract? Keep in mind that anything under internal connections will not be a multi-year contract. That means that you're purchasing the equipment outright, right? Now, if you do have a MIBS contract, or it could be a basic maintenance contract, that may be a multi-year. All right, but if it's internal connections, the answer would be no. Then it's going to ask, what's the date you awarded your contract? So this is the date that whoever, at your organization, signed and dated it, not the service provider's date. Some service providers may sign it, and send it over to you, sign and date it. USAC's going to look at when did you as the applicant sign and date. All right, so we key in the date there. All right, and again, this has to be on or after that allowable contract date. All right, so then we'll click on Save and Continue. Now, I do want to show you this, and again, we only, I would see this happening maybe with MIBS under Cat 2, where, some contracts may allow you at the end of the contract, maybe it's a MIBS contract for 5 years, and at the end of that contract term, they may allow you to extend it, meaning that you can extend that contract without going back out to bid immediately. All right. So if it does have the language there, indicate yes. But like I said, MIBS is the only one I can think of under Category 2 where this would be an option. All right. So again, if you do have that option to do the extension, we put in what's the date that you can extend it out to, how many extensions were on that contract, and how many months, total would you be able to have service if you were to extend it. All right. But typically under Category 2, the answer is going to be no here. All right. So we're almost through this. So then it's asking about the pricing confidentiality. All right. And I like to say 99.9% of the time, the answer is no. A service provider cannot tell you you're not allowed to share their pricing, right? That you have to keep their pricing, confidential. All right. So what they're asking for here is there's some, state rule, state law, some, legal decision, all right, that prevents you from sharing that pricing. All right. So like I said, typically the answer is no. Save and continue. Okay, so now we get down to the end of this, the confirmation. Check it over, very carefully. All right. The key things you want to look at, especially the 470, the number of bids, the document that you uploaded, did you upload the correct document, and did you select the correct service provider? All right. And then also that award date. Check those fields very carefully. All right. If everything is correct, you could go ahead and click on complete. All right, just remember though, once you click on complete, it has submitted that contract record. You cannot go back and make corrections, all right, or delete it. All right, it's in there for good. So if you do see that you made a mistake, just click on the back button. Just keep going back one screen at a time until you get to the section that you need to make the correction. All right, but we'll say, yep, that's good. I'll click on complete. All right, so now it's going to say, okay, here are your submitted contracts. Now, if you have another contract, let's say you're looking for, maybe equipment from two different companies. Maybe you're going with one company for some switches and access points, and a totally different vendor, a different company, say for a firewall, or UPS. All right, so if you do have a second quote that you've signed and dated, all right, go ahead and click on add a new contract and go through the steps for that. All right, any questions at all on adding contracts? I know I went through that fairly quick. All right. So let's talk about the 471. Now, again, if you did attend the CAT 1 471 training, for CAT 2, it's not near as involved. All right, it's a little more straightforward. So this won't take as long. Okay, so one of the ways that we can start the application is in the upper right-hand corner. You can click where it says FCC Forms 471. So we'll click there. And just remember, I know I'm harping on this, but if you did not get your data, updated by that January 9th, close of the admin window, information from 2024 will be displayed. All right, so we'll start our application and it asks for a nickname. Here I just called it my FY2025 category 2. All right, again, it's up to you, whatever you name that. If you start a form and then realize, no, I didn't mean to do that, throughout the form in the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see the option to discard the form. And I strongly suggest that you do that, right? If you start a 471 and then for whatever reason, you don't complete it, you want to discard it because the portal will start sending out emails about mid-April, early May, letting you know that you didn't submit your 471. By discarding it, you'll stop those emails. All right. So again, just a heads up there. Okay, so we'll click on save and continue. Now, I do want to show you, if you're working on this 471 and you're not able to complete it in one sitting, in order to get back into the form, just basically go up to that blue menu bar, all right, that you'll see, click on tasks, and you'll have a task there that starts with the word create. All right, anything that says create means something that was previously started, all right, but not yet, submitted. But it will show you the application number and whatever nickname you gave it. So we just click there, all right, to continue on. All right, so we do have to identify the main contact. So this is the individual that the reviewer will reach out, will email to say, hey, there are questions out in the portal. All right, so it's going to ask, are you the main contact? All right, we do not manually key in our contact information here. All right, so I'll indicate yes, and then it's going to populate the name, email address, and phone number of the credentials of, basically however you logged in. All right, whatever credentials you use to log in, that's whose information will pop up there. Now, it does ask, is there a holiday or summer contact you would like to list? So if you know you're going to be on vacation, say during the month of July, it's up to you if you want to put that alternate contact there. So that way you're available if the reviewer does have a question. That's not required. All right. If you don't want to deal with, E-rate over your vacation, and I don't blame you, you can leave it blank. Now, I do want to point out here, if you say yes, or I'm sorry, where I have yes now for the main contact, if you were to indicate no, you would have to type in a person's name. It'll go out and search the portal. Bottom line, they have to have a portal account to be listed as a contact. All right, like I said, you cannot manually key in, the information for that main individual. All right, so I'll go ahead and click on Save and Continue. Okay, now this is where it's asking, what category of service do you want to request on this 471? So obviously we're going to come over and we'll choose category 2. And then down below that, it shows the 3 bulleted items. Here are the service types, all right, that's included under Cat 2. So I'll click on Save and Continue. Now, the next several screens that we see, it's just pulling information from the portal and populating it on the application. All right, so it's going to show, here's the name of the school district that's serving the main library. All right, so this is where your the student counts, the lunch information is coming from. All right, so we just click on Save and Continue because you cannot edit the information here. All right, then it's going to say, okay, well, here are all of the related entities for this library system. All right, it's going to show the square footage. So again, this is a quick way to look at, what's the square footage per library branch. All right, to give you the heads up, do you need to, correct the information in the narrative? All right, so pay special attention there. All right, I'll click on Save and Continue. All right, then it's going to show us, here's that, the district information, the student count, the lunch information, and then your discount rate. All right, I can click on Save and Continue. So now we're at the main function of this 471. It's adding what we call FRNs, funding request numbers. All right, adding funding requests. So like I said, on the same 471, we can ask for internal connections. We can ask for basic maintenance. All right, now if you get a quote from a service provider, where maybe you're asking for some new access points, some new switches, a new wireless controller. If they quote you, say, a line item that's classified as basic maintenance, maybe you need some type of extended maintenance, even though that's all on, all listed on the very same quote, because it's 2 different service types, internal connections and basic maintenance, keep in mind you will need to create 2 different funding requests. All right, because again, we have to separate the funding request by the service type. All right, so again, you want to pay very close attention to the SKUs on that on your quote. All right, the part number, the SKU, and then the basically the description. All right, but again, if it does include both internal connections and basic maintenance, be prepared to do 2 different funding requests. Now, if you did not get a chance to look at your Cat 2 budget before jumping into your application, you do get another chance here. Right, we'll see the we'll have a hyperlink there, so you can go out and look at your budget just to confirm that. All right, so we'll start by clicking on Add FRN. All right, this is very similar to what we saw with the category 1. All right, so we start with giving it a nickname. Here I said this is my Wi-Fi and switch upgrade. Now, because we're doing internal connections, all right, which is a one-time purchase. When it asks the question, is this a continuation? You would indicate no. All right, and then do not click on the copy button. Now, if you are applying for, let's say you have MIBS, that Managed Internal Broadband Service, all right, those are typically multi-year contracts. So if you are applying for MIBS, all right, and this is year 2 or more of that MIBS contract, then that would be fine to copy. All right, and the steps are exactly the same that we have under category 1. All right, so here under the service type, once I give it the nickname, we'll click on the pull down and you see the 3 service types. All right, so I've clicked on internal connections. All right, and then I'll click on continue. Okay, so now it's asking, how are you purchasing? Well, the reason that we call, that simple hardware quote a contract is because once we get to this, portion of the 471, how are you purchasing? Tariffed or month to month doesn't apply, to purchasing equipment outright. So our only other option is to call it a contract. All right, so we'll click there and continue. So this is why it was so important that we went through that manage contract step, all those steps first. So we can point to our actual document here. Okay, so once we click on continue, it says, okay, point two, go out and search and select that contract record. All right, again, the default is to search by your billed entity number. It's going to be auto-populated for you. Click on search. It comes back with all of the contracts that are in the portal, right? Again, we can click on the award date, click on that twice to bring the most current to the top. And we just check the box to the left there, all right, to say, yep, that's the contract record I want to select. Now, once we select that, it's going to show us, the information that we provided earlier. That's the 470 number, the date it was awarded. All right. Now, under contract information, okay, anything that, if we indicated no for the continuation, all right, and we did not copy, July 1, 2025, right, the first day of this upcoming funding year, will auto-populate for us. All right. Now, it is asking what's the date your contract expires for the current term of the contract. Now, when this is internal connections, all right, that hardware quote, a couple of things to keep in mind here. We said that service start date is July 1st. All right. Well, that is the first day of the upcoming funding year. However, we are allowed to start receiving the equipment as early as April 1st. So the FCC has said, we understand that, you may want to purchase this early so that you have it installed ready to go by the official start of the funding year. Okay, so you can start, receiving the equipment, but the earliest it can hit the door, right, is that April 1st date. Okay, so now on the back end of that, where the end of this upcoming funding year, the traditional end of that funding year is June 30th, 2026. We also get an additional 90 days on the back end of the funding year to get the equipment purchased and installed. All right. So again, oftentimes we'll wait until we receive the official funding letter to move forward with the purchase. All right. I mean, that's your option there. All right. Well, we never know for sure when we'll actually receive the funding letter. All right. So that's why the FCC has said we'll get you, we'll give you that additional 90 days on the back end. So just make sure for the expiration date, go ahead and put in the September 30th, 2026 date. Now, you may be saying to yourself, oh, we're not going to need that much time. Do yourself a favor, right? So if you go to, request equipment and, things get delayed, right? So, we saw that a lot during the pandemic. All right. If you don't need the extra time, not a problem. It's just that if you discover that you are going to need more time, well, then you'll have to file an additional form, all right, the Form 500 to extend that date. All right. So do yourself a favor. Go ahead and get the extra time up front. Let me know if you have questions about that. All right. So we'll click on continue. All right. And this is where we get to the narrative. So here I'm just saying we're seeking access points and switches. You don't have to be, real detailed here, because once we get into the next section, what I call part 2, where we're going to give all the line item detail, all right, the reviewer is going to see specifically, the make and model, of all of the equipment that you're requesting. Now, I mentioned about the square footage, if you need to correct that, this would be the place to do that. All right. So you could write here, we were unable to update our square footage. The correct square footage for, the XYZ branch is this. All right. Go ahead and put that information there. So then when the reviewer looks at your application, right, they can go in, on the backside basically, and update the square footage to make sure, again, that your Cat 2 budget is calculated correctly. All right. So let's go ahead and add those line items. So I'll start by clicking on Save and Add Manage FRN Line Items, right? And then, pardon me, then it's going to say, okay, start adding the line item. So we click a second time. Now, I do want to show you here, this is a copy of a quote. This is one that I'd gotten about a year ago, all right? But it's a really good example. Now, when we look at this, all right, and we read through it, we can see that, there are 12 unique items on this quote. That means that we have to have 12 different line items listed on this 471. All right, so this is not hard. It can just be a little tedious. I have filed some of these where there were like 30 or 40 line items. All right, but again, for each unique item, you have to add the line item to the application. All right. Now, let me show you a little different version here. All right, where we received a quote where it was broken out by library site. All right, so here was a configuration for our East Library, a configuration for the West Library. But you can see that, they're getting the exact same equipment, just different quantities. All right, they're getting the same 4 items. So to save yourself a little time, instead of, because again, it's, 4, unique items, instead of creating 8 different line items, you can combine the counts and just do 4 line items. All right, again, it just saves a little time here. So we can see that for East, they're asking for 60 APs. All right, the Catalyst 9120. All right, and then West is asking for 40 of those. Again, it's the exact same make, model, same part number. Okay, so here we can just add those like items together and just add 4 line items. I try to do just about anything to keep from adding additional line items if you can't tell. All right, but again, do yourself a favor, okay? Add those items up. Okay, one other thing here I want to show you is kind of what I call my cheat sheet. All right, when we go to add items on the 471, first we have to choose the type of internal connection. Then we choose the type of product. All right, so I've added this just to, hopefully help you find some of these items. All right, because if you wanted to add a firewall, you have to click on data protection first. Then you'll see a pull down with the option to choose between a firewall and a UPS. All right, if you need to add a switch, sorry, I'm not doing this in order. You choose data distribution first, then you'll see router or switch options. Under wireless data distribution, that's where you're going to find access points, antennas, LAN controllers, and wireless controllers. All right, so again, like I said, just kind of a cheat sheet to help you find some of these items. Now, I also want to point out there are these items, the software, miscellaneous, license, transceivers, and modules. When we file the Form 470, there's no separate pull down for a transceiver or a module. All right, there's kind of a catch-all called antennas, connectors, and related components. So that's on a 470. That's where I'll account for any of these additional, like the modules here. All right, but when we get to the 471 on the pull down under the type of internal connections, it's a much more extensive list. So you will see an option for a license, a transceiver, a module. All right, so when you look at your quote, if you have something listed there called a module, all right, you will choose that type of internal connection. Like I said, it's just broken out a little bit more so on the 470 compared to the on the 471 as compared to the 470. All right, so in this case, I went in and under the type of internal connections, I chose, clicked on the pull down and I chose wireless data distribution. Then you can see where now I have a pull down for the type of product. So I chose access point. All right, so we'll start there. Then on the right-hand side, there's a very lengthy pull down where you can choose your make, all right, the manufacturer. All right, so it's just this very long alphabetical listing. Now at the very bottom, there is an option for other. So if you cannot find the manufacturer in that list, go all the way down to the bottom, select other, and then you'll manually type in the name of the manufacturer. All right. Now, the second step here is once we've identified the manufacturer, then we have to identify the model of that equipment. All right, so go back, look at your quote, and then the model, we have to manually key that in. All right, so then that way it'll show up on the 471. It just helps the reviewer. They'll go back and look at your quote to say, okay, here's this MR86 listed on the quote. Now, it does ask, is installation included in the price? Typically, this answer is no. Service providers really should not, roll in the cost of installation along with the cost of the equipment. All right, because it's, first off, it's hard to compare apples to apples, right? If one vendor includes the installation and another does not. All right, now you may ask for E-rate to cover installation, but that's where I really encourage you, to make sure that the service provider breaks that out and they show the installation as a separate line item cost. All right, so I'm going to answer no. Installation was not rolled into the cost of the equipment. It does ask, are you leasing, or is this a non-purchase agreement? Typically, again, that is no as well. All right, and I'll click on Save and Continue. Okay, so anytime that, we see the screen where we put in dollar amounts, if there's a monthly cost, that's going to be listed on the left-hand side, one-time cost on the right-hand side. When we're purchasing equipment outright, all right, there is no monthly cost. We're buying it outright. All right, so on the left-hand side here, I'm going to enter zeros because we cannot leave the fields blank. So I'm going to put zeros there for the monthly recurring cost and eligibles and monthly quantity. All right, but here on the left-hand side, they have this, tucked here. All right, we have to indicate for the price of the APs, how is it priced? All right, typically the option would be each, all right, because they've quoted us, in this case, say $1,099, per access point. All right, so I've selected each. Then I come over to the right-hand side for the one-time cost. Go back, look at my quote. Okay, so the per unit cost was $1,099. There's no ineligible cost that I know of, so I'll enter 0. And then I put in what's the quantity. All right, so go back again, look at my quote. I've got a quantity of 50. Okay, so save and continue. Now the system does all the math for us, right? Multiplies that one-time cost times the quantity. So it's showing us here, this is the pre-discount amount, all right, $54,950. So we click on Save and Continue. So now it's asking, is every entity for this organization receiving service? So if these 50 APs will be installed out in, each of my library locations, I can indicate yes. All right. If you know that you're only buying this equipment, let's say for 2 of the branch sites, you can indicate no and then select which of those 2 sites. Just know that, if you indicate, let's say it's going to go to 3 branches, and then you realize, no, we're going to go ahead and, put these 50 APs just in these 2 branch locations. All right. That's not a problem. You just basically want to keep track of where you physically install the equipment, because if you get audited, the auditor is going to say, okay, E-rate funded 50 APs, where are they physically located? All right, so just keep track of that in your inventory system. All right, so you almost cannot get this question wrong here. All right, so save and continue. Okay, so once you click on save and continue, it'll give you a pop-up, with a confirmation of the sites. All right, when you save that or click on continue. All right, then it's going to come back to the screen that says, okay, you've got one line item out there. All right, and you'll see the number there, the funding request number .001. So every time we add another, then we'll get .002, .003, and so on. All right, but it will show us, the type of equipment, the quantity. That's a help if you realize that you maybe you made a typo, put in the wrong quantity, right? You can come back and click on that line item number, okay, and then go back in and edit that. And let's see, Sandra, your question. Yeah, so that is perfectly fine. All right. So for Sandra's question, if you put a quantity on the 470, I refer to the 470 as a wish list, right? Because sometimes you don't know for sure exactly how many devices that you need, or it may be based on, the cost. Maybe like in this case, these APs were $1,099 a piece. Well, maybe I intended to get 10, but realized I can really only afford 8. All right, so that is perfectly fine, all right, if the quantity is less. Right. Now, if it's something where you ask for a very large quantity, let's say 100 access points, all right, but then you realize, no, I'm really just going to buy APs for just one branch, so I really only need, 15. in that case, it's not a problem, but I would go back and inform the service provider just to make sure, reducing the quantity by, a large amount is not going to change the pricing. Does that make sense? All right. But yeah, just because you put a quantity on a 470 does not mean you have to move forward and buy that full amount. No matter how much a service provider may tell you, you have to buy it. I have actually experienced that with service providers saying, nope, you said you wanted 20 of these, you have to buy 20. Okay, that is not the case. Okay, so I'm going to continue adding some of those additional line items. All right, so I'm going to show you what it looks like to ask for the license. So I'll click on add a new line item. Okay, now this time when I click on the pull down, when I go down toward the bottom, I'm going to see license listed. All right, and because it's kind of a singleton, right? I don't have to do a second click to choose type of product. All right, so it's automatically defined for me. Same thing here though. I indicate the manufacturer and then the model of equipment this license will be used for. All right. Now, sometimes like when I'm, typing in the model information, I'll say licenses for, and then put that that model there. Okay. Then again, I'm going to indicate no for the installation and the lease. And I click on continue, just like we saw before. Okay. Zeros for the monthly cost. All right. And then I put in the unit cost. Now, keep in mind with license, when you're buying license for, brand new equipment, those are considered what we call right to use. All right. It's in essence the operating system, right? It's the software that you have to have, to use the equipment. All right. So when it is a license, it's typical to do a subscription. You can do a 3-year, a 5-year. All right, as long as it falls under internal connections, meaning that it really is just right to use, you can go ahead and ask for, let's say, that 5-year subscription up front. All right, so you put that full cost. When it falls under internal connections, you can pay for that multi-year and go ahead and get reimbursed for that full term, that 3-year, that 5-year term. Okay, so again, just another heads up. So we'll look at the quote. All right, and let's say that's $250. Let's say that's for a 5-year subscription. 0 for the ineligible, and then the quantity. All right, well, it's for those 50 new access points. All right, save and continue. Just like we did before, you'll say here are the recipients of service. Which of the library sites will these licenses be used at? All right, save and continue. Now, I won't sit here and do, all of these line items, but you can see that, I've added pardon me, in addition to the access points in the license, I added 7 switches, 7 transceivers, I added 7 firewalls, and then there was an installation cost, all right, for those pieces of equipment, all right. So again, look at, how is it listed? Oftentimes, like say installation, it may have installation 1 lump sum cost. So it'll be listed as a quantity of 1, but it's installation of, multiple switches, multiple APs. All right. If your quote shows installation as a single lump sum cost, all right, then you can list that as a quantity of 1. All right. So we just keep adding those. Now, once you're done, adding all the line items, you would click on save and continue. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that. So when I click on save and continue, then it comes back and says, okay, here's that funding request number. Here's the nickname you gave it. It had 6 different line items. All right, and then here's the FRN calculation. Now, this calculation, it's if you go back and you look at that previous screen, right, all of those line items, this the dollar amount, this is the pre-discount amount. So the system just basically adds all of that up. Then it multiplies it by whatever your discount rate is. All right, so let's say it's 80%. So here's the amount, that 80% that you're asking E-rate to cover. All right, but again, remember when you look at, how much money do I have available in my category 2 budget? It's going to be based on what's the total here, right? Because again, it's based on the pre-discount amount. All right, and I know that can be quite confusing, so let me know if you have questions about that. All right, so if you're done adding funding requests, you can go ahead and click on review, right? Review the form and get it submitted. But let me show you here, and again, I'm not going to go through all of the steps, all right? But if you click on add FRN, and let's say we have a MIBS contract, maybe we're buying all this new equipment, but we're going to contract with a company, to do that monitoring management of our connectivity equipment. All right. So again, we could add the FRN to the same 471. So you would give it a nickname. Now, if this is the first year of that MIBS contract, all right, you're going to indicate no, that it's not a continuation, and do not copy. You would only be able to do that if it's year 2 or more of a multi-year contract. But under service type, I'll choose managed internal broadband service. Now, when I do that, there's I call it 3 different flavors of MIBS. All right. Is this managed? Is this a situation where it includes both the management and leased equipment? All right, because that's an option under MIBS. You could contract with a company instead of buying the equipment outright. They just, throw in the lease of the equipment and charge you a monthly rate. All right, I see a lot of the school districts doing that. Not as many of the libraries. All right. But again, if the agreement that you have includes leased equipment, you would choose that first option. Okay. Second option is managed by a third party, meaning that you're asking for MIBS, but you're going to purchase equipment from them or another vendor. USAC says that the reason they have it, listed that way, it just gives the reviewer, if you're also going to have an internal connections request for this upcoming funding year, it just gives the reviewer the heads up, go out and look for, that internal connections request as well. All right, because that will give them the heads up as far as what equipment, may be managed. Yeah, the third option here would be managed service contract of equipment already installed. Maybe you already have all of your APs, your switches. Maybe you're all set there. You just need, that assistance to have somebody come in and do that management monitoring for you. All right. So again, just look at your situation. All right, and choose which of those 3 would apply. All right, and then once we click on save and continue, MIBS is typically a monthly recurring, so you would put in the monthly cost, all right, and choose which libraries are receiving that service. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of those steps there. Now, if you have a maintenance contract, like I said, it could be just a simple line item, for some extended, maintenance on some new equipment that you're buying, or maybe you're entering into a basic maintenance agreement for equipment you already own. All right, but we give it a nickname, right? We click on add FRN, we give it a nickname. Now, if this is this is the first year of say a multi-year MIBS contract, right? Then we choose basic maintenance of internal connections. Now, once I click on continue, okay, it's simply asking total quantity of equipment maintained. All right. So USAC's going to be looking closely at, the quote or the, a maintenance contract to really detail what equipment is going to be maintained. But they don't ask us to identify the equipment on the 471 itself. All right. So if I'm asking for maintenance, let's say on, 50 access points, or maybe 10 switches. All right. You do want to break it out by the type of equipment. So again, what's the total number for that equipment type? All right. Now, also with basic maintenance, typically these are quoted as a one-time cost. All right. Similar to what we see with license. Maintenance gets really messy. I want to caution you. So if you are going to ask E-rate to cover basic maintenance, if you're doing more than, basically 2 or more years, let's say it's a 5-year maintenance contract. Typically they will, the vendor will have you pay for all 5 years up front. All right. USAC though treats basic maintenance as if it were a multi-year contract, even if you have to pay the full cost up front. Okay, so if you are going to apply for that multi-year basic maintenance, let's say it's $5,000, $1,000 a year, all right, for a total of $5,000. Then when you're putting in the cost, you put down just 1 year's cost, even if you have to pay all 5,000 up front. Okay, like I said, this has gotten really messy. There's all kinds of rules around basic maintenance. In fact, my counterpart in a neighboring state actually discourages applicants in their state from using their Cat 2 money for basic maintenance, right? Because it's become so difficult. You may get a funding letter, but we run into issues when you file, let's say you file the BEAR form for reimbursement. Okay, so I just want to make full disclosure here, giving you the heads up that if you ask for basic maintenance, it can be problematic. Pardon me, got a tickle in my throat. Bear with me a second. But like I said, just give you the heads up there. Pardon me. Okay, so once we're done adding funding requests, you can go back and get another chance to look at your Cat 2 budget. Okay, and I strongly suggest that you do that. All right, you can click on View Cat 2 Budget. All right, and then it's going to show you. So here's the budget. Here's the cost for anything on this current 471. Here's how much money you have left. And I apologize, I'm gonna have to stop for just a second here.
We've all been there this week. I myself had a presentation yesterday, Lori, and just about lost my voice. So there's a lot of content here. Hopefully folks are getting what they need out of it. We will have this recording available after the presentation is done. Usually takes about a day or so to get things processed and indexed and loaded up onto our YouTube channel. So I would imagine it's probably going to be a little bit later on Friday, possibly Monday, when you'll see that recording. So, all right, we got Lori back.
Very much. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
The sinus. Yeah, sorry, I do apologize.
There's so much stuff going on right now.
So much stuff.
Yeah. So hopefully you can make it through the rest and get some hot tea.
Oh yeah. Hopefully I'll make it through. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, so as I was saying, before I interrupted myself, be sure to check the Cat 2. So you can see here, after I added that funding request, as I look across, I only have $4 left in my budget. All right. So again, just make sure, because if it's showing a negative number, right, if you didn't check this beforehand, I would suggest that you go back. If you see that, your budget does not support everything, then I would go back into one of those line items and reduce a quantity. All right. You can still say ask for all the license, but you could, reduce it by one. You want to make sure that you're within budget, because even if you're over, by, 25 cents, the reviewers will not move forward with approving your application. And they will not make a decision for you to say, okay, we're going to take the cost from this item. All right. They leave it up to you to make that decision. All right. So again, just make sure to check that, yep, you're fully covered. So if you're done adding funding requests, all right, let's look at completing the 471 application. And as I said, thank you very much. I appreciate your patience here. Okay, so let's say on my funding request, I did add a basic maintenance request. I had some MIBS out there, and then my Wi-Fi upgrade. All right, so we'll click on Review Form 471. Now, when I do that, it gives me one of two options. I can click on Refresh if I want to go ahead and get this done now. All right, I can go ahead and click on Refresh. If maybe I'm running out of time, I can click on Resume Task Later. All right, but make sure you go back and complete that task. All right, it's not done until you hit that submit button. So here we'll go ahead and click on refresh. Now with the refresh, you may have to click it several times. If you click on refresh and nothing happens, give it about another 10, 15 seconds, click on refresh again. All right, once it is done, then you're going to see the screen where it'll give you a PDF draft of the 471. So you'll see the download document link. I strongly suggest pull up that PDF, look it over, make sure everything is correct. If it is correct, just check the box just below saying, by checking this box, I certify that that it is correct. If you see that maybe you missed a line item, you transposed numbers, whatever, you can click on edit form. Now, when you click on edit form, it'll take you back to the beginning of the application. You'll just keep clicking on, save and continue till you get to the section that you need to, make those corrections. Now, as far as the certification, again, one of two options. If you are what we call a full rights user in the portal, then you'll have the option to continue to certification. Full right users have basically that ability. If you are a partial right user, then you'll only see the option for send for certification. Now, I have had some full right users, maybe there's another individual, say within the library system that has a portal account. Well, maybe you're not comfortable making the certification. You want to send it off to, to the other individual. All right. So you could, even if you are a full right user, you could click on send for certification. All right. And let the other individual complete that step. Just make sure, though, that if you do click on send for certification, let the other individual know to watch for an email, right? Because it may wind up in their spam folder. They may get the email and not really understand what it is that they need to do. Okay. But I do stress this because over the years, we've had some individuals, miss the 471 filing window because the person who had to complete the certification never got that done. All right. So again, just be careful there if you are clicking on that send option. Okay, here I'm going to go ahead and click on the continue to certification. Now, I do want to show you if you clicked on that resume task. All right, we go back again to that blue menu bar. We looked at this earlier, right? Just go back to that blue menu bar, click on task. Then you're going to look for something that says review PDF. All right, that will then bring up that draft version and let you continue the certification piece, just so you know where to go back and find it later. All right, so once we click on that continue to certification, this is exactly the same. If you've sat through the category 1 training, this step is exactly the same. All right, every time that you see a box on the left-hand side, it has to be checked. Now, depending on the type of applicant, you may have 1 or 2 boxes here. All right. Now, this is just one really long screen. Now, it is going to show us the summary information here. It's going to say, here's the total pre-discount amount, all right, listed on this form. Here's the amount of funding. So, I said earlier, let's say you're at an 80% discount rate. It's going to be that percentage. Here's what you're asking E-rate to cover. Then the third dollar amount, this is what we call the non-discount portion. This is the portion that you're asking, or excuse me, that you would have to pay out of pocket, right, after E-rate covers their portion. The fourth dollar amount, this is, it says total budget amount allocated to resources not eligible for E-rate support. Okay, so this would be not that, we'll see $6,600 here, that non-discount portion. That's not what it's referring to here. Here it's looking for, okay, you're asking for a bunch of, access points and some switches, a firewall. What about paying for the electric bill, to, plug all this equipment into? All right. Software for, let's say end user devices to be able to use that equipment. All right. So this dollar amount, to a certain degree, it's kind of a made up number. All right. The reviewers only seem to take issue if you leave it at 0 or if you put some huge dollar amount. So don't get carried away putting in zeros there. All right. But just, come up with an estimated amount. If you have a technology budget to pay for, tablets, desktops, you can put in that dollar amount. All right, don't get too hung up on, on that one. All right, just make it a reasonable number. But let me know if you do have questions there. All right, now the system does, it kind of adds everything together. What E-rate's covering, the non-discount portion, plus what you identified, right? It adds a lot of that up together, okay? Or actually, I'm sorry, it's adding up the dollar amount you entered and then the part that E-rate does not cover. So don't panic when it shows this inflated number. Okay, now there's two questions here where we have to answer yes or no. Just know that you should be saying no, just say no. If you answer yes to either one of these, it means you're violating E-rate rules. All right, and if you read it carefully, it basically you're indicating that the service provider, that they're helping you come up with the funds to pay that non-discount portion, right? Or they're waiving that part. And we've had vendors do that over the years, basically say, it happened to me when I was an IT director at a school district, that a vendor said, if you go with us, you're at an 80% discount rate, we won't bill you the 20%, right? We'll just ask E-rate to, send us the 80% and we won't bother billing you. That's against the rules. You have to show that you're paying your non-discount portion, all right? And vendors cannot help you with that, all right? So just say no. Okay, so like I said, it's just a very long screen. So just keep checking all the boxes there. Read through, make sure that you're comfortable with it. If there is something there that you're not comfortable making the certification, you can click on back. All right, click on send and send it to somebody else to certify. All right, so if you're good with that, you check the boxes. We click on certify. When you do, you get that pop-up basically saying, here's the penalty for false statements. All right, click on yes. All right, and get it certified. Now, it will come back immediately with a confirmation. I strongly suggest, if you want to print out a hard copy, print it to a PDF, save a copy of the screen, all right? Because this is your proof that you did get the form submitted by the deadline. The last couple of years, especially for 471s that were submitted really close to the deadline, something happened with the dates. And it showed that, there were a number of 471s that it looked like they were a day late, right, getting it submitted. Okay, this is your evidence that you met the deadline. Now, it does have a hyperlink here. What we saw earlier in that hyperlink was a draft version of the 471. All right, but here we can click to get to basically get a copy of the certified form. All right, now it typically takes about 2 to 3 minutes for the document to be generated. So if you click on it immediately, all right, it may give you an error message. All right, just know that it can take 2 to 3 minutes for that to be available. All right, so once you have that, saved, printed, whatever, you can click on close. All right, any questions on the form itself, on certifying it? So let's talk about next steps if there are no questions. Okay, now a couple of things here. If you did not click on that link I was just showing you to get a certified copy, you can always go back later in the portal and pull that up. From the landing page, if you go all the way down to the very bottom of the page, the very last section is called the FCC Forms and Post Commitment Request. All right, so you can choose form type. 470 is the default, but if you click on the pull down, you can select the 471, choose 2025 for the funding year. All right, and then you're going to see first the application number, and any 2025 471 will start with the digits 251. All right, then it'll also show you the nickname. This is why it's beneficial to come up with a descriptive nickname. It just makes it easier to pick out if you have multiple 471s, all right, to distinguish one from the other. All right, but we would just click on the application number, and then you're going to actually see the form or the option to download that form again. All right, but if you realize that you need to make a correction, all right, maybe you realize that you left the line item off. It was on your quote, but you forgot to add it to the form. All right, we are allowed to go back and make corrections, As long as you can show it was, this was a clerical error, all right? You didn't go out and decide after the fact we're going to, purchase some additional equipment. You just made a clerical error by missing that line item on the quote itself. All right, those are the kinds of corrections that are allowed. All right, so we just click on the application number. Then you're going to see some menu options. Typically, it's to the far right. You'll see the option for related actions. So when I click there, then we see the option here to submit modifications. All right, so again, let's say you put in the wrong quantity, you typed in the wrong dollar amount. All right, those are the kinds of things that you can correct. So when I click on submit modifications, it's going to ask, okay, do you want to change something that has to do with the application itself? All right, like changing the quantity, whatever. Or is it to change something about the entity? So if you needed to update your square footage, I mentioned putting that in the narrative, you could also come here and click on modifications and click on entity, and then you'll see the field to put in the square footage. All right, USAC actually recommends, even if you put it in the narrative, to also do this modification, because it will then flag your application to let the reviewer know there's something that they need to do on their end. All right, to basically, make that correction for you. Now, I will not go through all of the all of those modification options, but if you go out to basically my website on that resource library page, I do have a step-by-step guide, right, if you need to make those modifications. But most important to know that is even an option. Okay, so the big part of this program is going through application review. Just know that all 471s, they are scrutinized. A reviewer will look at these. We've uploaded a copy of a quote. So they may move forward and issue a funding letter with no questions at all. All right, but sometimes they're going to come back, all right, and ask questions. So if you do get, they'll send you an email letting you know that there's some inquiry in the portal. So, for the inquiries, we do have to respond within Epic, right? Not reply to that email. So to get to the inquiries, same, basically same process as doing the modifications for the first part here. Go down to the bottom of the landing page to the FCC forms, post commitment, search for your 471 for 2025, click on the application number. Now, for the review questions, there's one of two ways that you can get to those questions. All right, the easiest is in that list of menus, you'll see where it says review inquiries. You can click there. All right. You can also click on related actions and you'll see an option here, respond to inquiries. All right, so either one of these would work. Now, when you click on those, you'll see a table. It'll tell you the type question, all right, and then you'll click on respond to inquiry. Now, I mentioned this during the 471 training. This is something that we've seen the last couple of years where the reviewers will reach out to a library and ask you to prove the enrollment numbers and the lunch counts that the school district provided. All right. First off, if you get that type of inquiry, please let me know so that we can let the USAC admin staff know that the reviewers are asking inappropriate questions. Because you as a library, you cannot validate those counts. You have no idea how the district came up with those, that information. So first off, let me know if you do get that type of inquiry, all right? Because those you cannot respond to. Now, also, when you get these questions, both Christine and I have access because we both have state coordinator access. We can drill down and see those questions so we can help you answer those because sometimes it's a little confusing what it is they really want, all right? So both of us have the ability to go in and see those questions. All right, so don't hesitate, reach out and let us know if you need help. Now, we talked about, some of the things that the reviewers may ask for. If you add a new library branch, they're going to want a validation to make sure that, yeah, this really is a library in our state. All right, so Christine or Don can write that letter for you. All right. They may ask for, some information about a service that you listed. right? So they'll tell you specifically what it is that they're looking for. Now, if you did change your square footage, they're also going to want validation to prove the square footage. Again, that's something that Christine or Don can write a letter for you. If it's a new building, they may need, something from the architect, right? Christine, do you want to speak to that at all?
We, I think the short version is we will work with you. We will try to figure out, we will try to see into the mind of the USAC folks and figure out what you have that will work for them. Yeah, Lori's got a lot of experience at this and Don does, and we haven't had too many difficulties so far. Okay, all right, fair enough to say.
But thank you though, because usually it's like whatever documentation you have, it may be, like I said, a statement from the architect. It may be, sometimes it's hard to look at a drawing and know for sure, but whatever documentation that you have to be able to confirm that square footage should make us all happy. Okay, but just so you know, these are the kinds of things that the reviewers may question. But you are given the opportunity if you need to make a correction. All right, they're typically very good to work with. However, if you do have a reviewer that gives you a hard time, let me know that as well. All right, because we can escalate that. Just like any other industry, there's a lot of turnover in staff, so we tend to get new reviewers each year. That sometimes maybe they don't know the program as well as they should. Sometimes. All right. So again, just let us know if you get a question and you're not quite sure what to do with it. All right. And obviously you have the documentation ready. All right. And when you do get the inquiry, you're given 15 days to respond. But within the portal, there is an option to ask for an extension. And those are granted the first time you ask. It's an immediate extension. So it will turn your 15 days into, it'll basically give you another 7 days. All right. So those are immediate. If you have to ask for a second extension, sometimes that will require a manager's approval. All right. So again, respond within the portal. Now, once you go through all of that, all of those steps, then we wait for the funding letter. And I mentioned earlier, there's no rhyme or reason as to when these are issued. It's not first in, first out, right? But watch for the funding letter. And I know that right now, reviewers, they are pouncing on, not in a bad way, but they're pouncing on 471s immediately. I mean, like within hours of folks submitting, 471s, getting inquiries from the reviewers. Someone mentioned on the state coordinator list, looking at their state, that over 30% of the 471s that have already been submitted are already sitting at what we call wave ready, meaning that the review has already been completed and they're just waiting to pull the trigger to issue the funding letter. All right. But again, we don't know for sure, when that will happen. They typically, from the last few years, start releasing funding letters usually about mid-April. All right. And the last few years, it seems like they push to get the category 2 decisions out there, before the cat 1s. All right. Because again, if you need to buy that equipment to get it purchased and installed by July 1. All right. But when you do get the letter, it'll come as an email with 2 attachments. One will be a spreadsheet with 1 row of that spreadsheet per funding request with lots and lots of columns. All right, it's a little hard to read, but the second attachment will be a really pretty PDF document. All right, it'll, nice layout. And if something was denied or reduced, it'll give you an explanation. And I didn't mention this earlier, but one of the things that's common with category 2 with internal connections, let's say you're asking for a firewall, right? Depending on the level of firewall appliance that you're requesting, sometimes it will include what we call ineligible functionality, right? So the manufacturers report to USAC for every part number, right? Every make and model, what percentage of that device is considered ineligible. So you may wind up getting something saying, okay, that firewall you asked for is only 82% eligible. Okay, so again, just a heads up. Typically, though, the reviewers will let you know that during the application review. Okay, so there's no surprises. But there have been occasions where we did get a few surprises. So just look the letter over carefully, but it'll give you an explanation if something was reduced or denied. All right. And it's really important, to make sure, check the letter over because, let's say something was outright denied because maybe there was a review inquiry out there that you didn't get the email, right? So you didn't even know that there was an inquiry out there. If you don't respond after a period of time, the reviewer will go ahead and process your application with the information on hand. Well, if they don't have the information needed, they'll go ahead and just deny the application. All right. So really important, check everything over because if something was denied, you have 60 days from the date the letter was issued to file an appeal with USAC. All right. And I like to say it's not 60 days when you finally get around to looking at the letter. It's 60 days from when USAC released it. Okay, last thing here, just to make you aware of some options that we have after the funding letter is issued. All right, so these, again, only after the funding letters come out. And you'll find these in the upper right-hand corner. All right, it's one of several of the shortcuts. All right, first off, we have the option called spin change. Well, maybe when you were keying in, the service provider identification number, maybe you transpose numbers. Maybe it was two companies that merged, and so the spin change. All right, maybe the company's gone out of business, and you have to find a different company. All right, so after the fact, we can make those corrections. We can even do what's called an operational spin change, where let's say you choose a specific vendor and then you find out after the fact that vendor can't provide the equipment, right? We have the option of choosing a completely different vendor without having to go back out to bid again. Now that option, there are some additional rules there, but please let me know if you run into that situation, right? I can help you with that type of spin change. The other option is what we call service substitutions, right? This is really handy. Let's say if you ask for a specific make and model of access point, and then you find out that it's not available or it's in such back order, you may want to go with a different access point instead. So the program does allow us to do this substitution. All right, as long as it provides the same functionality. So basically, you're going to substitute an access point for another access point, a switch for a switch. All right, because I get this question a lot. It's, well, we asked for $20,000 in switches, but we decided we really need to replace our APs instead. Okay, that's not allowed. All right, because it's two different functionalities there. All right, as long as it's like equipment. Now, the other thing with substitutions, like I said, it's allowed. Just know that if you go with an updated model of, let's say, access point, let's say it costs $50 more per device, E-rate's not going to cover any of that overage. All right. But again, they will allow you to make the substitution. Anything more than what the original cost, all right, that will be out of pocket. Okay, the third option here, it's this form called the Form 500. And many of us have never had to touch this form, all right? But it does quite a few things for us. Let's say you put down the wrong service start date, all right? And this is after you've received your funding letter. You could file the Form 500 to change that date. Let's say you need to change your expiration date. Maybe you asked for internal connections because you have a new branch that's being constructed. So you put down the September 30th, 2026 date. Well, maybe that construction has gotten delayed. You could push that date back another full year, all right? But you would have to file the Form 500 to let USAC know that. And that's especially important for the 2025 funding year because this is year 5 of the current 5-year Cat 2 budget. You don't want to lose those funds, right? So you could, like I said, you could extend it out another full year. You could cancel a funding request. You can reduce the funding amount. Like I said, lots of different things that you can do there. All right. If you run into any of those situations and you're not quite sure, what to, how to fill out that form, again, Christine or I can help you with that. Questions? I know that's a lot of information. Not as much as Cat 1, but yeah, the Cat 1 was almost painful.
I was just going to say, if you don't have the questions now, take a look at that slide and post it on your desk somewhere because Lori is absolutely wonderful. I just asked her a question yesterday, picked up the phone, left a message. She called me back as soon as she could, and we got it resolved very quickly. So lots of good resources on her website too.
Yeah, there's lots of guides to step you through. All of my screenshots with arrows pointing, do this and now this. But if you get stuck, please don't hesitate.
Well, thank you, Lori. We
Thank
really appreciate every little last drop of information that you have shared with us. And I hope that this makes all of you here very excited and confident in taking on Category 2 471s. And if you hit a point where your confidence wavers, you know where to go for help. This has just been a wonderful, wonderful set of resources for us here, Lori. Really appreciate it. Make sure you make use of that Cat 2 money. This is your last chance
Yes,
for this funding cycle.
yes. Because when the FCC, we've sat in meetings and the FCC said, why aren't the libraries using that money? But we've given them some reasons why, like the SEPA requirement, things like that. But we really, if you are SEPA compliant, we'd love to see you, utilize this. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
I'm going to stop the recording. All right. All right. Thank you, Christine, and I will get this recording to you as soon as it's available. I am doing training again tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
the Cat 2 for the schools.
Yeah.
But as soon as that's done, hopefully it'll be available.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I've worked with Laura Solomon, processes our stuff onto the YouTube channel, and she's got your recording up there already. I just have to send it out to the folks from Tuesday. January has been so extraordinarily long.
Listening to a local radio station this morning and talking about how, one more day, the first month of 2025, that can't be possible. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Right. I started saying February about halfway through.
I know. I know. I keep thinking, okay, and it's going to be March. No, I'm totally forgetting February.
Yeah, but February's fast.
It is
So,
fast.
and the snow is melting. So there is hope. There is hope for all of us.
There is hope. Yes. Well, thank you, everyone.
All
Still
right.
more folks on, but thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.